Welcome to the Sleeping Barber podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Barber's Brief.
I think I just punched my mic, V.
I think you did. We're gonna take that.
I was trying to give you the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, and I punched my mic.
That's okay.
Sorry about that.
So,
listener.
Yeah, right. Sorry for your eardrums. I'm V. He's Mark.
It's true.
And what we're doing today is literally going through what caught our eye over the last couple of weeks. We're going to get into an audience Q&A. We're going to highlight our marketing moment, but more importantly, we're going to get into our ad of the week as well. For those that are returning, thank you for your continued support. We appreciate you. Mark, good morning.
Good morning, V. I'm pretty good. I'm really good, actually. Yeah, I got this hair thing going on. I got a haircut today.
Hair flip.
Things are good, man. We're going to Paris this week. Super excited about that.
I think we could end the episode there. There's the news of the week.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
That's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, what do you got in the news, V? What's caught your eye? Or do you want me to start?
How about you start? Because I like yours.
Okay.
I like yours.
Okay. Adidas was weaning itself off of discounting. So
sounds like Nike.
Yeah. So they posted their first annual loss in 30 years. Big portion of that was from cutting their ties with Yeezy.
Yeah.
But one of the big news statements was that they gave investors assurance that they're not going to that they're reducing their dependency on discounts. And so there's not a growth at all costs strategy here. Mm-hmm. One of the things that has happened is they reduced their marketing and POS expenses from 12.3% of total revenue in 2022 down to 11.8% in 2023. So just interesting to see that there's a statement like that even after the strategy, after a loss.
Yeah, I'm just curious, like point of sale expenses, what that would be, but like
going for the article just kind of bundled it. I didn't go into explaining what that meant exactly, but it could be signage, point of sale signage. It could be in store shops, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's where my mind went, obviously. But then I think about POS as like the actual POS system, and I'm like, no more cash registers. I'm just
yeah.
But that's interesting, and reducing the what's it called, the dependency on discounting. I know it's always a category that's heavily discounted either by bigger brands and whatnot, but Nike did something similar. I want to say, what was it, 3 years ago, where they really started changing the way that they do. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah, well, and it kind of speaks to what we've been talking about on occasion, not infrequently, but the idea that with inflation and like pricing strategy matters a lot. It just
100%.
It's one of those levers. Speaking of levers, laws and levers, that I think a lot of people just forget to look at, or could look at more as an opportunity to drive profit.
Agreed.
What do you got?
I got the generational divide, right? So Google loses in local search to Instagram, TikTok amongst Gen Z. So Gen Z are those for this article, it's 18 to 24. So while Google remains popular for local search among older generations, and I used quotes in older because I feel like I guess I'm part of that older because I still go to Google for those local recommendations. But anyways, it's not what the young kids are doing. Instagram, 67%, and TikTok, 62%, are the preferred choice amongst Gen Z. Now, Google, which ranks third, around like 61% of Gen Z's preferred local search engine, still maintaining a stronghold again amongst those other audiences. That's really the headline there. I don't even know how you would use TikTok from a local perspective. But I mean, maybe.
Yeah, like I know if you do the search, here's us old guys talking, hey?
Right?
if you do the search,
you click on the button.
But it does show up like you're in the search bar on Instagram. It does show up location stuff. So, but yeah, it's a weird one. Like I don't often look for that kind of information, like image-based information. I would look for phone numbers. I would look for like how do you get there, that kind of stuff. I guess it's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I can appreciate the different generations are using these platforms a lot differently,
Totally.
and I get that. For local search, I think that's very, very. I don't believe those platforms were made for that. So unless there's something specific that you can do in those platforms today, and I routinely still use Instagram personally. TikTok, I'm
Yeah.
more a peripheral user.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check it out and see what that actually
Yeah.
what that looks like. But I
It's
thought
worth
that was
looking at.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
What did you got have next?
Well, there's this ongoing, like we've talked about demand gen a couple times and whether it's real or not. I know we've got Dale coming up on for a
Yeah.
guest spot at some point in the next month or two, which is
Yeah.
really great. But I always think about him when I think about demand gen. So, because he talks about like, well, there's there's a difference between demand gen and marketing, and one is a unicorn and the other is a real thing. It's a horse. So, anyway, when it comes to demand gen, I was just laughing about this because I was going through Instagram. Speaking of Instagram, this morning, and there's this little, those little diagrams that get popped up.
Right.
So it looked at Moderna, Etsy, DocuSign, Zoom, Peloton, HelloFresh, and all of them have seen their valuations drop by 75 to 97% since their
Wow.
pandemic peaks.
Okay.
So my headline was like, "Oh, just add demand gen marketers, and that will fix the problem." But it's
100%.
right, and so, but it's funny to me just thinking about the implications of when we were just talking about loyalty, but the words we use
Yeah.
matter. And if you are so adamant that demand gen is a thing,
Mm-hmm.
you would just add a demand gen marketer, and it would fix all those problems. And in
You can.
contrast, there's that conversation we had with Tony Ulwick around meeting customers' unmet needs.
Yeah.
And I think the more and more I think about that and what that means. And so to me, all those companies, Moderna, Etsy, DocuSign, Zoom, Peloton, HelloFresh, that were like these darlings of the pandemic period that could do no wrong, need to find new unmet needs in order to, and that's strategy. You have to figure out new ways to drive revenue, drive growth.
Agreed.
Because just adding a demand gen marketer isn't going to do it.
No.
Otherwise, they would have figured that. Otherwise, they would have corrected their valuations.
And like when you look at those companies specifically, you can see why they were the pandemic darlings, just because of the nature of the service that they offered in that point in time became in high demand. Very simple. You still wanted to stay fit. Best way to do so, buy Peloton, and you still feel part of a community, or that feeling that you were in a spin studio, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, I think you're completely on point there. It's like they could have used that opportunity then just to bask in their own glory. It'd be like, okay, how do we evolve the product? At some point, this is going to flip around. We're going to go back to whatever the normal was. And probably what they're seeing now is what their normal is. So
Yeah.
they could have tried to get ahead of that curve from an innovation perspective. Now they're forced to, because obviously from a valuation perspective, it doesn't look good.
Well, and a lot of those valuations, they swing based on expectations. So if you had promised, $1 million in revenue or whatever, and you miss by like $1, people lose their mind and investors go crazy.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. All right. What else you got?
This one's big, kind of. I think it's pretty big. So AI powered ad ignites creator controversy on Instagram.
Oh no.
Dun, 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 dun.
Did they use local search when they were doing it?
I don't think so. But I was reading some of the comments, and holy smokes, they're spicy. So Under Armour's first is a world's first AI powered sports commercial. Sorry, they aired world's first AI powered sports commercial that has sparked a lot of controversy amongst creatives worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
The director, Wes Walker, and his team were basically tasked with creating an ad from a 3D model of Anthony Joshua, the boxer. They had zero athlete access. The piece combined video, AI photo, 3D CGI, 2D video effects, motion graphics, digital video, advances in AI voiceover. And all of this was kind of in an attempt to use all the latest technology to create an ad within 3 weeks. So they were only giving, the brief was really, you have 3 weeks to put this ad together. So they had zero access to the athlete themselves. So they did go down the AI route. Now,
Right.
so they used, AI, CGI, motion graphics. They also used some pre-existing footage that existed. And it's been ripped apart by creatives around the world. And I think when I look at this, I'm like, it's interesting to see how AI is helping, artists and creators create content, move a lot quicker than maybe the traditional way. Because if you think about it, doing a big brand anthem,
Yeah.
you don't do that in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It's just not enough time.
Yeah.
And I think it's very clear that tech is going to play a larger role in creative moving forward. But I think where a lot of people got a little up in arms about it is with, they didn't credit a lot of the pre-existing footage that existed in
Right.
the ad, so they didn't credit the original, people behind that.
Right.
Even though technically, like Under Armour doesn't have to credit anybody, it's their assets, so they give up the assets to another director. Like, hey, do what you can out of this.
Mm-hmm.
But I think where people are getting really, up in arms about this is it's lacking the traditional creative cues that would be coming from human creatives versus
Yeah.
like just leaning on the new technology.
Yeah.
I don't know where you stand on this. Obviously, for me, there has to be a balance. I think there is a big opportunity with tech and how to use tech to,
Yeah.
streamline some of those processes. Obviously, you never want it to skew completely on the one side of it, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah, it's great. It is an interesting story. I mean, to me, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, who are the people complaining? It sounds like the creatives,
yeah,
which then led me down the path of, well, that's what the writer's strike was all about. I think
yeah,
about having control over where AI can play a role and all that kind of stuff in Hollywood, and protecting the jobs of the creative people. But then I also went to the idea of like, probably so most people didn't care,
yeah,
or even notice, and probably the consumers didn't care or notice. But then I also was thinking about how, if you're in a position where you can run creative in 3 weeks or less, like a brand anthem in 3 weeks or
yeah,
less, sure, why not? But also, because you can doesn't mean it makes it good.
yeah,
And so
totally.
then you don't have like the constraints of, well, we better get this right,
Yeah,
because it's going to cost us a lot if we get it wrong. And so
totally.
I feel like there's probably a balance somewhere in the middle.
Yeah,
There's a balance between how it can augment your production capabilities, but also the strategic thinking around what is it that you want to say and what is it you want to do, rather than just, yeah, we can do it, so let's do it. Because I think you end up maybe producing a lot of junk that way, and then running a lot of junk, and then it's not effective.
yeah. One of the comments. So comes from Heather Ashley, who posted a comment on his original post. Says, "Hard pass, Wes. This is a misstep. It feels soulless. Collectively, we have the power to define the future. Using rhetoric like AI is just a tool and not end product makes you part of the problem. The end game of corporations like UA is to eliminate humans from creativity pipeline by using AI as a tool." I also think like there was a lot of sentiment like this. Think
Yeah,
I know where that is coming from, but I also believe that's a little bit of a reach as well. I don't think
yeah.
corporations are purposely trying to say no more humans. We don't need humans.
No,
They're
they're
just
just
trying to
trying
find
to.
efficiency.
Right. Yeah.
So, anyways,
Yeah. No, it's a really interesting one. I think there's going to be more of those kinds of debates, and not just in creative. Like, why
yeah,
not
I agree.
accounting? Why not like
Totally.
any legal? I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
Anyways,
I got one for you. There's so many
yeah,
AI things.
I
The next
know.
time I do this, I'm not picking any AI stories.
I'm with you. The sleeping barber with no AI. We
Yeah,
promise.
yeah. But it's everywhere. Somebody the
It
other
is
day
everywhere.
I was talking to was like, "Oh, I want to be good at AI." I'm like, "Yeah, it's important. I think it's really important to understand it and learn it." But it's also kind of like saying, "I want to be good at the internet." Like it's everywhere.
That's a
You
fair
know what I
point.
mean? Like it is everywhere. It's in
It is
everything.
everywhere.
Anyway, so South by Southwest just happened not too long ago.
That's right.
There's a few trends that I thought was kind of interesting. The article headline was talking about consider adding these to your brand playbook.
Mm-hmm.
So South by Southwest is a very tactile, physical experience kind of event. It's super cool. And so three of the things that they published in the drum, one was around sampling. So move beyond sampling. So creating full sensory experiences, taste, sight, sound, touch,
Mm-hmm.
proprioception, thermostat. How many? You know, I used to think there was senses, and there's a lot more. I don't know what the number is, but there's like
Well,
five. There's like 7 or 9 or something like that.
but I would have just gone back to the traditional ones.
Yeah.
The five
Anyway,
senses. Anyways, yeah.
yeah. So there's, the idea there is, and when we talked to Mary a long time ago, she had
Yeah.
said like brand experience creates 75% of the memory or equity.
Yeah.
And then advertising only does one. So
25.
yeah. So if you end up in a position where you're just like branding a booth, that's
Yeah.
kind of like you're missing out on 75% of the opportunity. So I
Totally.
thought, just thinking about brand experiences
Yeah.
was a really cool, like, and having it, this is point number 2, moving beyond a booth. So building this brand experience into the portfolio planning of your annual plans.
Mm-hmm.
So combining the audience reach you get from an event like South by Southwest,
Right.
with and combining that with improvements in online tracking or offline tracking, and brand experience, you can drive a lot more brand impact because you're creating experiences for people.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of just obvious, but a good call out. And then here comes the AI. Move beyond the theoretical was the third point. So embedding AI into activations to enhance experiences. So for the example they gave was IBM Watson
Right.
was there, and they were using it in real time to showcase how it could improve customer service tasks.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than just talking about it, like set up an example
Set it up.
of set it up, let it run, show people that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing you can do is use it for ideation, like help you create ideas for activations.
Agreed. I think this is great. I've never been to Southwest
South by Southwest.
South by Southwest. Sorry, I'm like, wait a second, I'm missing something there. But I have seen there's usually a lot of great stuff that comes out of those ones. But I think it was really interesting to see that.
Yeah.
Good one. I'm gonna end on another AI thing. Jesus, I should have probably rethink this a little bit. But anyways, Elon Musk launched Grok, which is his AI company. But he's also made it open source. So the language model is basically aiming to differentiate itself from OpenAI, but the move has had some mixed implications for the AI development community. Now, Grok is a chatbot that's trained by XAI, so X, I think the old
Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah, with a sassy tone and extra access to Twitter data, similar to ChatGPT or Claude, and is competitive with the last generation medium-sized models like ChatGPT 3.5. So they're kind of positioning it around that level of capabilities. Now there are questions that are rising around like Musk's motivation behind this. Like, is XAI dedicated to open source, or is it just a move or a strategic play against OpenAI? Right now it's open source to get the dev community behind it, to help evolve it, just to take that and then make it a closed source at some point. There's a lot of speculation as to the why behind it, but I think as it comes for language models, I think we're only going to see more and more start coming out as time progresses, versus things becoming less. So it's going to be really
Yeah,
interesting to watch it.
super interesting. The one thing that
Yeah.
just blows my mind about him, less so about the story, but I'm like, oh, right, yeah, why wouldn't he just start an AI company? Like, he's got the
Right?
Boring Company, he's got the rockets, he's got the cars. Like,
What's missing in the portfolio?
he did the Hyperloop was his. Like,
Yeah.
he did X a long time ago. Like, man, the volume of like really successful ideas that come out of him is insane.
Well, if you think about Twitter, or sorry, X, it is a huge repository of language, and you
Yeah,
have questions, responses. You have like just the
totally.
nature of the actual product itself lends itself from a training perspective really well because it's short, it's succinct. So I
Yeah,
mean, like, there's a part of me that feels like maybe this was his motivation all along, and it
yeah,
wasn't
maybe.
to grow the platform.
Yeah,
Who knows?
who knows?
Marketing moment. You're up. What did you
Yep.
find this week?
There's a really cool case study I found from DDB Chicago called Apologize the Rainbow. And so it was related to Skittles. Well, it is Skittles.
Love
So,
Skittles.
yeah. So, you may know this. I didn't know this. But 9 years ago, they changed the flavor of green Skittles from lime to apple.
I didn't
And
know that. I
okay.
guess I don't love them that much.
And over the years, they were getting shit kicked from fans. They would get like upwards of 20,000 tweets per year on average of people hating on Skittles for having changed the flavor and asking them to bring it back. So last year, and this was considered to be one of the most awarded campaigns of the year in 2023. And so DDB went through all of them, about 180,000 tweets, and created a
Jesus.
campaign based on apologizing to fans. So they took all of them. I presume most of them. I don't know that you could do all 180,000, but then they went and launched the campaign with a live stream on Twitch of a 35-minute press conference of a guy reading out tweets and then apologizing to the individuals. That was it. It was just like tweet after tweet after tweet, and it lasted for 35 minutes. Then they put up a social post at one point, and it was 16 feet long of basically the script of this guy.
That's incredible.
Of all the people that had been complained and apologized.
Yeah.
They went to Twitter and apologized to over 65,000 people there. They put up rotating billboards on Times Square. They sent people free Skittles. So that was the campaign. The results of the campaign was that sales increased by 21%. Searches for lime Skittles went up by over 1,000%. People watched over 5 million minutes of this live stream. It's something like 5 million minutes turns into like 9 years of watching, the equivalent of 9 years of watching.
You just want to wait to see your name being read out and apologize to.
Yeah. I probably, right? Like,
That's crazy.
I don't know. Do they do it alphabetically? Do you have to listen to the whole thing?
Oh my gosh. Like the poor creative souls that had to go through that process. Jesus.
Yeah. For me, the one of the things that I think is really interesting about, I love these kinds of case studies or these kinds of campaigns that's interactive, that
Yeah, that's
uses,
true.
it's call and response kind of idea. I think it's so fun. The other thing that I think is interesting too is that this is a campaign that was generated or started. Started over 9 years ago, essentially, when they got rid of the flavor. So then they bring it back. And so it's interesting using your history to go and create ideas.
It's a great one.
Yeah, it's a very un-AI case study, which is great for a whole bunch of reasons. But it's also fun. Like, Skittles is fun. It's meant to be fun. It's a great way to like have fun. They did call out that the executive team here, you could imagine, like, this is serious business for them, but for everyone else, it's Skittles. But it would have taken so much courage for them to say yes to this campaign.
Oh, 100%.
Right? Like,
think about that.
Yeah, like, you changed the flavor for whatever reason. It's been 9 years, and now you're opening up a whole can of worms.
Yeah.
Like, what's the risk? What's the brand risk to that? You know what I mean?
Right?
But somehow, they agreed to it, which is amazing. Good for them.
I think this is one of the great examples where first of all, it becomes, you don't have to do the big flashy campaigns to drive. Um, I was going to say the word buzz. To drive awareness. Let's just say that, where you don't have to have the fancy CGI stuff. Like here, like you said, this is a campaign that was kind of in the works for 9 years, where now they're bringing back one of the traditional flavors, and they thought to do so by just apologizing to all those that they told the fans that
Yeah.
said you shouldn't be doing this. So I think that's a very creative way of and a very easy way to bring this to life as well. So I thought,
Yeah.
very well done.
Yeah.
Great example.
Yeah, it was a fun one.
Great example.
Okay. Audience Q&A.
Yeah.
I didn't actually have one this week.
No.
Did you have one?
Didn't. No, I didn't either. But I think what we can do here this time around is, we have a great guest that's coming up, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. And I think one of the things that we as marketers consistently struggle with is the idea of, do we target broad reach, or do we go against those, high intent buyers that obviously a lot of our targeting really usually is built from, or is very foundational in a lot of our strategies. Yeah. So I think I'm going to pose a question here to you, in the sense of, if you're standing up a product and you're approaching to drive sales for the organization that you're working with, what would you advise their targeting strategy to be?
Yeah. Well, okay. So a combination of a couple things come to mind. One is, I'm like more and more adamant about the idea of needs, consumer needs. Mm-hmm. We talked about it a little bit with Peloton and all the pandemic brands. So there's needs there. And so those are really important. I don't know if you know anybody that bought a Peloton or signed up for HelloFresh, but they're not all uniform. And so that was one of the things that came up in the conversation with Ethan that we just recorded. Mm-hmm. Like, there's more commonality with people who floss their teeth than there are with millennials. It's just crazy. So the idea of needs-based segmentation, to me, coming back from that conversation we had with Tony Elwick, is so valuable, and understanding consumer needs. That would be my first approach of, like, if we're trying to launch a product, I think it makes a lot of sense, any product, whether it's new or old, to target people, especially with their unmet needs, because that's going to be the group of people that are going to want to buy the thing today. And so that matters a lot. So understanding what their needs are, which you probably can't get from Google or Facebook or
totally
whatever product or platform. Mm-hmm. How about you?
No, I absolutely love that. And I think I feel like I have Tony ringing in my head, just a lot of the really understanding those nuances, because I think that's something that we forget as marketers. So start with the needs, make sure you can find that common thread across, the largest possible audience, and then kind of go after that. After our conversation with Ethan, and obviously you listeners, that's airing next week, and you'll absolutely love it. I think for me, what the biggest realization is like, step away from the hyper targeting, really trying to find like the smallest nuances of the audience that are, that have expressed interest in your products, mm-hmm. and make sure you're maximizing your ability to target those that maybe don't even know who you are yet. I think he used a percentage like 77% of people. Mm-hmm. So I think for me is that fundamental shift in understanding how to grow a business versus, sitting on, say, those high intent audiences and showing efficiency at the cost of essentially driving real value to your organization. So I think that for me was the biggest, is the biggest takeaway, as when you're thinking about positioning and creating a segment, if you will, in the digital world, to say, okay, who am I going after? Mm-hmm. Try to make that as big as possible, right? Because you're trying to build future growth as much as possible. And at the end of the day, you have things like your email programs. You have things like where you can do more of that one-to-one, or speak to those that are already part of your ecosystem. Yeah. You don't need every channel to be doing the same thing, And I think that for me is the way I would make sure that I'm investing as much as possible in that space.
Yeah, that's a great point. And to just to build on what you were just saying, like that 60-40 rule comes back in my mind with
Yeah,
Bennett and Field. Like
totally.
60% of your brand spend, or 60% of your spend should be spent on brand,
Exactly.
40% on tactical or low funnel tactics, or whatever you want to call it.
Call it
But
whatever you want it.
yeah,
Yeah.
but brand meaning reach, like reach all of the
Reach.
buyers that you can with 60%, and then spend. It's not to say that you just eliminate all of your tactical spend, but
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Over investing all channels into the same audience is a really limiting idea. There's that, and I know we just talked about this for the post pod recording, but there's that perpetual traffic podcast.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me, and I keep thinking back to this because it's like they have a really good case study that they showed where, as performance marketers, they did all the things you think for performance marketers should,
Yeah.
and the ROAS was amazing, but the sales were awful.
Yeah.
And then they did everything you think a performance marketer shouldn't do, like reach your
Yeah.
audience, and then ROAS was terrible,
Yeah.
but the real sales, were amazing. So like, yeah, it's one of those things where you can get so sideways just by following the numbers that are in front of you from Google and Facebook.
And the problem is, like, sometimes those things are being positioned as best practices, but they're self-serving best practices,
Right.
right? And I think that's where, as marketers, we have to have that critical mindset where we're saying, wait a second, let's really understand what we're trying to do here. And there's a lot of products like that are out there right now that I think we can openly question very easily as even performance marketers, to say, like, what actual value is it bringing to, say, the media mix or whatever the case may be. And I think that's where sometimes we fall short because we just take that as truth.
Mm-hmm.
These platforms come to us and say, no, you have to make sure you're
Totally.
doing CAPI. Well, okay, for example, CAPI is a great way to inject a lot of your first party data into the platform that you can do a lot of the things that you were from a remarketing perspective,
Mm-hmm.
retargeting perspective, and finding and nurturing those audiences that are already intended. But if we're taking what we've learned from Ethan and just basically what we've come to understand more, is like, you know what, maybe it's less about those retargeting pools and it's more about just making sure you're getting out there contextually to the right audiences in the right time.
Yeah. What we should look into at some point is like how the process of going through that, because it's so logical that you would go after all your first party data, but that's not where your growth is going to come from. So like,
No.
it's such an interesting thing. Like it flips a lot of what we're traditionally over the last 10 years have done because of digital channels. So we should look into that a bit more at some point.
I think it's a good point. Yeah.
Out of the week, V.
Out of the week. So it was a couple of weeks ago now. We celebrated International Women's Day, and Amazon celebrated grassroots players, soccer players, in their in a UEFA football commercial. So they're partners of the women's UEFA football, and they just basically honored that. Honored that sponsorship with a great ad. So the campaign focus was, it's a European-wide brand campaign, highlights the passion and determination of real women football players, soccer players. Sorry, I naturally just use the term football here as well. Emphasize how playing women's football boosts confidence and self-assurance both on and off the pitch. So I think it's a great way to lean in from an ad perspective. The creative execution, obviously, you can imagine it is, it features a cinematic series of energetic scenes showcasing women's skill on the pitch. It's also set to the 1950s track "Sweet Old Fashioned." Sweet Old Fashioned Girl. I don't know if you heard that. It's a great track for this ad, but it's from Teresa Brewer. It also includes shots of gameplay, interactions that hauls from the locker rooms and the moments of celebration. So you can really kind of feel like naturally this campaign is really led around the coming together, the winning, etc.
That's awesome.
Now, the objective itself for this campaign was, and it was the first time Amazon's first pan-European sports sponsorship. So they've never really sponsored in this space before. but they're really leaning on supporting the UFA's women's football. So it aims to capitalize on growing support for women's football across Europe. But even though I think we talked about this in our last Barber's Brief, where you're seeing more and more people come together and celebrate women's sport than ever before. So I think it just follows nicely in that new, I don't want to call it a trend, because I don't want it to be a trend. I want it to be something that is long lasting, sustaining, being obviously, I think we're both fathers to girls. And it's highlighting the talent and dedication that even women have to endure as well. This is not just a male thing, right? So I think for me, it's a great ad. Again, it showcases the power of women and being empowering, how they, obviously come together for a common goal. So I absolutely loved it. I think it's a great one to celebrate.
Yeah, I think it's a good one. And one thing I like about it is that so often there's these moments in a calendar, like when you are plotting out your content strategy, and you're like, oh, we got to put up a International Women's Day post here. You know what I mean? No, you don't, unless you're going to do something good. And to me, this is like one of those things where you did something good. So, yeah, I like that.
Agree. So what's coming up next week?
Well, I'm mentally juggling this to make sure that I get this right, because we're recording this one a bit early. I think we've got Ethan Decker coming up on this. Did I get that right?
I think we do.
Yeah. So it's super exciting. Great conversation with Ethan on laws and levers of brand science. Super guy that just has a really, really fun way and non-threatening way about like communicating some of the stuff that's out there. It's really approachable, very fun. We talk a lot about toilet paper.
We do.
It was a good conversation.
Yeah, no, it was a gem of a conversation. And we were on the same time zone. And that was also another podcast that we recorded in the evening.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I don't know, man. Something happens when we record in the evenings. They come off a little bit different.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's funny. Almost none of our podcasts were recorded in the evening.
None, but we've had two. We had Ari and now Ethan that we were able to do in the evening for us, which I think they hit a little bit differently.
Yeah. Okay, V. Well, until next time,
go chase profitability.
There it is.
Look how succinct that happened this time.
It was really good.
Right?
I know.
Look at us.
It's almost like we've been doing this for a while.
A little
it's
bit.
Taken us a while to figure out how to say this.
Have you realized, by the way, we've like 64 episodes in?
Oh, no way.
Yeah. It's kind of incredible, isn't it?
Yeah. It feels like it was just yesterday
when we just started this whole thing. Our baby's growing.
Oh, it's all grown up.
Awesome, man. All right.
All right.
Well, have a great day.
See you, buddy.